Princess Nova stood in the crystal chamber, her large form trembling as hundreds of eyes stared at her with disgust. The Velthari Council members whispered among themselves, their perfect thin bodies glowing with that cold blue light that meant shame and disappointment. "Look at her," one council member said with a voice like breaking glass. "Once our most beautiful princess, now she brings nothing but embarrassment to our royal family." Nova kept her head down, feeling the weight of their judgment crushing her spirit. 6 months ago she had been the pride of the empire. Now she couldn't even look at her own reflection without feeling sick. Her body had changed so much that none of her royal clothes fit anymore. The other princesses wouldn't even speak to her. "Your Highness," the High Chancellor announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The council has decided your fate. Since you have brought such shame to our perfect society, you will be sent away to learn humility." Nova's heart sank even deeper. Exile was the worst punishment for any Velthari. Being separated from their crystal cities and their people was like being cut off from life itself. "You will serve as a worker on the human space station called Nexus 7, the Chancellor continued. "Perhaps working alongside such primitive creatures will teach you the value of perfection and help you understand what you have lost." The council members laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Humans were considered the lowest form of intelligent life in the galaxy. They were messy, emotional, and completely unrefined. To work with humans was the ultimate insult. "A human janitor named Damon will be your supervisor," the Chancellor said with cruel satisfaction. "You will clean floors, fix broken machines, and do whatever dirty work he assigns you. Maybe then you will appreciate what it means to be Velthari." Nova felt tears forming in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give the council the satisfaction of seeing her break completely. 2 days later, Nova found herself on a transport ship heading toward the human station. The other passengers, mostly traders and diplomats, gave her strange looks. Some pointed and whispered. Others just stared with open curiosity at the fat alien princess who had fallen so far from grace. When the ship docked at Nexus 7, Nova was surprised by how different everything looked. Instead of the perfect crystal structures of her homeworld, the station was made of metal and composite materials. Everything looked used and lived in, but somehow it felt more real than the sterile perfection she was used to. A tall human male was waiting for her at the docking bay. He had dark skin, kind eyes, and was wearing simple work clothes. This had to be Damon, the janitor who would now control her life. "You must be Nova," he said with a gentle smile, extending his hand in that strange human gesture of greeting. "I'm Damon. Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy." Nova stared at his outstretched hand, confused. No one had offered to touch her in months. On her homeworld, people moved away when she approached, afraid that whatever was wrong with her might be contagious. I am the one assigned to work under you," she said quietly, not taking his hand. She couldn't understand why this human was smiling at her. Didn't he know she was a punishment case? Didn't he realize what a burden she would be? "Great. We can always use an extra pair of hands down in the maintenance section," Damon said, lowering his hand without seeming offended. "You look tired from the journey. Have you eaten anything today?" Nova blinked in surprise. "Eaten? No, I haven't. But I don't require much food. I'm trying to." She gestured helplessly at her larger body. "Trying to what?" Damon asked, his expression becoming concerned. "Look, I don't know what your situation was before, but here we believe everyone deserves proper meals and rest. Come on, let me show you to your quarters first, then we'll grab some dinner." As they walked through the station corridors, Nova noticed something strange. The humans they passed didn't stare at her with disgust or point at her body. Some nodded politely, others said hello to Damon and included her in their greetings. A few children even waved at her with excitement, as if meeting an alien was the most wonderful thing that could happen to them. "The crew here is pretty friendly," Damon explained as they rode the elevator to the residential level. "We've got people from 12 different species working together. Everyone's got their own story about how they ended up here, and nobody judges anybody else for their past." Nova couldn't believe what she was hearing. A society where people didn't judge each other? Where being different wasn't seen as shameful? It seemed impossible. Her quarters were small but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a window showing the stars outside. It was the first space that had been truly hers in months. "Take tonight to rest and get settled," Damon said kindly. "Tomorrow we'll start with some easy tasks so you can learn how things work around here. And Nova? I'm glad you're here. I think you're going to fit in just fine." After he left, Nova sat on her bed and stared out at the stars, wondering if maybe, just maybe, her punishment might turn out to be something else entirely. 3 weeks had passed since Nova arrived at the space station, and for the first time in months she actually looked forward to getting up each morning. Working with Damon was nothing like what she had expected. Instead of treating her like a servant or burden, he worked alongside her as if she were his equal. "Hand me that plasma wrench, would you?" Damon asked as they repaired a broken ventilation system in the lower decks. "And be careful with the energy readings on that panel. If it goes above 50, we need to shut everything down fast." Nova passed him the tool and watched the readings carefully. She had learned more about human technology in 3 weeks than she had expected to learn in 3 years. What surprised her most was how cleverly designed everything was. Her people had always called humans primitive, but their engineering was actually quite brilliant in its simplicity. "Damon, can I ask you something?" Nova said as they worked. "Why do you always explain how things work instead of just telling me what to do?" He looked up from the panel he was fixing, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Because you're obviously smart enough to understand it. Yesterday you figured out that power coupling problem faster than I did. Why wouldn't I want to teach you more?" Nova felt that strange warm feeling in her chest again. It happened whenever Damon complimented her intelligence or asked for her opinion. Back home, no one had cared about her thoughts for months. They only cared about how she looked. "On my homeworld, people think I'm stupid now," she admitted quietly. "They say my brain got fat along with my body." Damon stopped working completely and turned to face her. His expression was more serious than she had ever seen it. "Nova, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Your brain doesn't change size based on your body. Intelligence has nothing to do with what you look like." "But everyone says dash." "Everyone is wrong," Damon interrupted firmly. "In the past 3 weeks, you've learned our entire maintenance system, figured out problems that stumped our senior engineers, and you speak 4 languages fluently. You want to know what I think? I think your people are idiots for not appreciating what they had." Nova stared at him in shock. No one had ever called the Velthari idiots before. Her people were considered the most advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy. But as she thought about it, she realized Damon might have a point. How advanced could they really be if they judged everyone by their appearance? "There's something I haven't told you," Nova said slowly, making a decision that scared her. "About why my body changed." Damon set down his tools and gave her his full attention. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to." "I want to," Nova said, surprised by how true that was. 6 months ago, I was working on a secret research project. My people were dying from a disease that was spreading through our colonies. The government said there was no cure, but I thought I could find one. She took a deep breath before continuing. "I was experimenting with quantum radiation therapy. It was dangerous work, but I was getting close to a breakthrough. Then one day there was an accident. I was exposed to concentrated quantum energy." Damon's eyes widened with understanding. "And that's what changed your metabolism?" "Yes. The radiation altered my cellular structure. My body started storing energy differently and I began gaining weight rapidly. But that wasn't the worst part." Nova's voice became bitter. "When my family found out about my research, they were furious. They said I had brought shame on the royal family by working on something so undignified. When I started gaining weight, they used it as proof that I was being punished for my arrogance." "Wait," Damon said, standing up straighter. "You were trying to save your people's lives and they punished you for it? They said a princess should focus on looking beautiful and making good marriages, not playing with dangerous science." Nova laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "They destroyed all my research and banned me from ever working in science again." Damon was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with anger on her behalf. "Nova, you're telling me that you sacrificed your health trying to cure a deadly disease, and instead of treating you like a hero, your people treated you like a criminal?" "I failed," Nova said simply. "I didn't find the cure and I ruined my body in the process." "You didn't fail," Damon said firmly. "You got interrupted. There's a huge difference." He started pacing back and forth, his mind clearly working. "Do you remember your research? Could you continue the work if you had the right equipment?" Nova felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in months: hope. "I remember everything. But I don't have access to the materials I would need, and even if I did, my people would never dash." "Forget your people," Damon interrupted. "What if we could set up a lab here? What if you could continue your research and actually save those lives you were trying to save?" For the first time since her exile began, Nova smiled a real smile. Over the next few weeks, something beautiful began to grow between Nova and Damon. It started small, like when he brought her extra coffee during their long work shifts, or when she stayed late to help him finish complicated repairs. But soon it became something much deeper. "Look at this," Damon said one evening, pulling out a small tablet device. They were sitting in the station's observation deck, watching the stars through the massive windows. "I downloaded some art from Earth's history. I thought you might find it interesting." Nova took the tablet and gasped at what she saw. The screen showed paintings of women from centuries past, women with full figures, soft curves, and confident smiles. They were portrayed as goddesses, as symbols of beauty and abundance. "These women, they look like me," Nova whispered, scrolling through image after image. "But they're painted as if they're beautiful." "Because they are beautiful," Damon said simply. "On Earth, we've had many different ideas about beauty throughout history. Sometimes people preferred thin figures, sometimes fuller ones. But we learned something important: real beauty comes in all shapes and sizes." Nova stared at a painting of a woman dancing, her larger body moving with grace and joy. "On my world, there's only one acceptable way to look. Everyone must be thin and perfect, or they're considered defective." "That sounds incredibly boring," Damon said, making Nova laugh despite herself. "Imagine if every flower was exactly the same, or if every song had the same tune. How dull would that be?" As the days passed, Damon started sharing more of human culture with Nova. He showed her music that celebrated differences, books that told stories of people who were rejected by society but went on to do amazing things, and movies about unlikely heroes who saved the day not because they were perfect but because they were brave. "Your species is so strange," Nova said one day as they worked together in their makeshift laboratory. Damon had convinced the station commander to give them a small and used room where Nova could continue her medical research. "You celebrate imperfection." "We celebrate authenticity," Damon corrected gently. "We've learned that trying to be perfect usually just makes people miserable. It's better to be real." Their friendship was tested when Officer Blake from station security started causing trouble. Blake was one of those humans who thought he was better than everyone else, and he especially enjoyed making cruel comments about Nova. "Hey fatty," Blake called out one day when Nova was carrying equipment to their lab. "Shouldn't you be on a diet instead of playing scientist?" Nova's face turned purple with embarrassment, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with distress. Several other crew members stopped what they were doing, waiting to see what would happen. Before Nova could respond, Damon appeared at her side like a protective shield. His usual gentle demeanor was completely gone, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "What did you just call her?" Damon's voice was quiet, but everyone in the corridor could hear the threat in it. Blake smirked, not smart enough to back down. "I called her what she is. Look at her, man. She's huge. No wonder her own people threw her away." What happened next surprised everyone, including Nova. Damon didn't get angry or start shouting. Instead, he stepped closer to Blake and spoke in a voice so calm it was terrifying. "Let me explain something to you, Blake. Nova is one of the smartest people on this station. She's working on medical research that could save thousands of lives. She's kind, hardworking, and a better person than you'll ever be." Damon paused, his eyes never leaving Blake's face. "If I ever hear you disrespect her again, you and I are going to have a very different kind of conversation. Do we understand each other?" Blake looked around and realized that every other crew member in the corridor was staring at him with disapproval. He mumbled something under his breath and walked away quickly. Nova stood there in shock. No one had ever defended her like that before. Even when she was a princess, people had been polite to her face but cruel behind her back. But Damon had stood up for her in front of everyone, without hesitation. "You didn't have to do that," Nova said quietly as they continued toward their lab. "Yes, I did," Damon replied firmly. "Nobody talks to my friend that way. Nobody." That night, Nova worked late in their lab, but she couldn't concentrate on her research. She kept thinking about what Damon had said. He had called her his friend, but the way he had defended her felt like something more. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, the way he always made sure she ate proper meals, the way he listened to her ideas as if they were the most important things in the world. For the first time in her life, Nova began to understand what it felt like to be truly valued by someone. Not for her royal title, not for her appearance, but for who she really was inside. And as she looked at her reflection in the lab's window, she realized something amazing. She was starting to see herself through Damon's eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she really was beautiful after all. The alarm bell started ringing at exactly 0800 hours, their harsh sound echoing through every corridor of Nexus 7. Nova looked up from her research, her heart already racing with fear. She had heard those particular alarms before. They meant incoming ships and not the friendly kind. "Damon," she called out, her voice shaking. "Something's wrong." Damon burst into their lab, his face grim. "Nova, you need to see this." He activated the wall screen, and Nova's worst nightmare appeared before her eyes. 5 massive Velthari warships hung in space outside the station, their crystal hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the black void. Nova recognized the lead ship immediately. It was the Imperial flagship, which meant someone very important was on board. "Attention Nexus 7, a cold voice crackled through the communication system. "This is Commander Zara of the Velthari Imperial Fleet. We are here to retrieve our property and claim what belongs to the Empire." Nova's legs went weak, and she had to grab onto the lab table to keep from falling. "They're here for me," she whispered. "But why?" "They were happy to get rid of me." Damon's jaw tightened as he read the incoming messages on his handheld device. "Nova, look at this. They're not just demanding you back, they're claiming ownership of all your research. Every formula, every breakthrough, everything we've worked on together." Nova's blood turned to ice as she realized what was happening. "My medical research. I was getting close to a breakthrough, wasn't I? The quantum cellular regeneration process. It's actually working." "More than working," Damon said grimly. "Your preliminary tests showed it could cure the disease that's been killing your people, plus dozens of other conditions across multiple species. Nova, what you've discovered here could revolutionize medicine throughout the galaxy." The truth hit Nova like a physical blow. Her people didn't want her back because they missed her or realized they had made a mistake. They wanted her back because she had become valuable to them again. But they still planned to treat her like property, like a tool they could use and then discard when convenient. "They waited until I did all the hard work," Nova said bitterly. "Until I solved the problems and made the breakthrough. Now they want to swoop in, take credit for everything and probably lock me away again once they have what they need." Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom, calling all senior staff to the bridge immediately. Damon squeezed Nova's hand reassuringly. "Come on. Whatever happens, we face it together." When they arrived at the bridge, Nova was amazed to see the entire senior staff already assembled, and they were all looking at her with expressions of support and determination. Captain Rodriguez, Chief Engineer Thompson, Medical Officer Kim, Security Chief Johnson, all of them stood ready to fight for her. "Commander Zara is demanding we hand over Princess Nova and all her research immediately," Captain Rodriguez announced. "They claim she's still bound by Velthari law and has no right to refuse their orders." "That's ridiculous," Chief Thompson said angrily. "She applied for asylum weeks ago. She's under our protection now. Besides," added Medical Officer Kim, "her research could help millions of people throughout the galaxy. We can't let them lock it away in some Imperial vault." Commander Zara's face appeared on the main screen, her perfect crystalline features twisted with arrogance. "Humans, you will return our princess immediately. She is royal property of the Velthari Empire." "She's not property," Captain Rodriguez replied firmly. "She's a person who chose to request asylum with the Human Federation." "Impossible," Zara scoffed. "Inferior species cannot grant asylum to Velthari royalty. You will comply or we will take her by force." That's when something incredible happened. Damon stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the communication system. "Commander, let me explain something about humans that you clearly don't understand. We don't abandon our people. Nova isn't just a refugee to us, she's family. She's one of us now." "Family?" Zara's laugh was like breaking glass. "You would claim kinship with a fat, worthless failure?" Nova felt tears stinging her eyes, but before she could respond, something amazing happened. Every human on the bridge stepped forward, creating a protective barrier around her. "That fat, worthless failure has made medical breakthroughs that will save more lives than your entire empire ever has," Security Chief Johnson said firmly. "She's worked harder and shown more courage than any of your perfect little soldiers," added Engineer Thompson. "And she's got more heart and intelligence in her little finger than your whole royal court combined," Captain Rodriguez declared. Nova looked around at the humans surrounding her, all willing to face down an Imperial fleet to protect her. For the first time in her life, she truly understood what family meant. It wasn't about blood or birthright or royal titles. It was about people who valued you for who you really were, who stood by you when the world turned against you. Commander Zara's perfect features twisted with rage and confusion. She clearly couldn't understand why these primitive humans would risk everything for someone her own people had rejected. "You have 1 hour to comply," Zara snarled, "or we will board your station and take what belongs to us." As the screen went dark, Nova made a decision that would change everything. Nova stood in the center of the bridge, surrounded by the humans who had become her true family. Her heart was pounding, but for the first time in months, it wasn't from fear. It was from determination. "Open a channel to the Velthari fleet," she said, her voice stronger than anyone had ever heard it before. Captain Rodriguez nodded and activated the communication system. Commander Zara's face appeared on screen again, her expression smug with anticipated victory. "Have you come to your senses, Princess?" Zara asked mockingly. "Ready to return home where you belong?" "I am ready to make an announcement," Nova replied, standing tall despite her larger frame. "I, Princess Nova of the Velthari Empire, formally renounce my royal title and claim permanent asylum with the Human Federation." The silence that followed was deafening. Zara's perfect features twisted with shock and rage. "You cannot renounce your birthright," Zara shrieked. "Royal blood cannot be erased." "Watch me," Nova said calmly. Then she did something that made every Velthari on those warships gasp in horror. She removed her royal crystal pendant and let it fall to the floor, where it shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I choose family over biology," Nova continued, taking Damon's hand. "I choose people who value my mind over my appearance. I choose humans." What happened next shocked everyone. Instead of attacking, the Velthari fleet simply left. They jumped into hyperspace without firing a single shot, leaving behind only empty space and a lot of confused humans. "Why did they leave?" Damon asked, still holding Nova's hand tightly. Nova smiled sadly. "Because I'm worthless to them now. Without my royal title, I'm just another fat alien with some medical knowledge. They'll probably tell everyone back home that I died in exile." But Nova was wrong about one thing: she wasn't worthless. Over the next 6 months, her medical research revolutionized healthcare across the galaxy. Working alongside human scientists, she developed treatments that could cure diseases that had plagued dozens of species for centuries. The Damon Nova Medical Research Station, as it came to be known, became the most important medical facility in 3-star systems. Ships arrived daily carrying patients from across the galaxy, all seeking treatment from the brilliant team of human and alien doctors who worked there. "Another success story," Damon said one morning, showing Nova a message from a grateful family whose child had been cured of a rare genetic condition. "That's the 300th life we've saved this month." Nova looked out the window of their new research station at the ships coming and going in the distance. Each one carried hope that had been made possible by human kindness and acceptance. "You know what's funny?" Nova said, leaning against Damon as they watched the sunrise through the station's viewport. "My people always said humans were primitive because you're so emotional. But your emotions are what make you the most advanced species in the galaxy." "How do you figure that?" Damon asked, wrapping his arms around her. "Because you're the only species that can see value in someone everyone else has thrown away. You looked at a fat, exiled princess and saw a person worth saving. That takes a kind of intelligence that can't be measured or replicated." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Rodriguez, who now served as the station's administrator. "Nova, Damon, you need to see this," Rodriguez said, his face appearing on their wall screen. "We just received a message from the Velthari Empire. It's marked urgent and requests immediate response." Nova's stomach dropped. "What do they want now?" "They're asking for help," Rodriguez said, looking as surprised as Nova felt. "Apparently, that disease you were trying to cure? It's gotten worse. Much worse. They're losing thousands of people every day, and their own scientists can't find a solution." Nova stared at the screen in disbelief. "They want my help? After everything they did to me?" "There's more," Rodriguez continued. "The message is signed by Emperor Thyros himself. He's offering to formally apologize to you and any other citizens who were exiled for not meeting their physical standards. He says the Empire was wrong." Damon looked at Nova, waiting to see how she would respond. Nova was quiet for a long moment, thinking about all the pain her people had caused her, but also about all the innocent lives that hung in the balance. "Send them our standard treatment protocols," she said finally. "Free of charge. But include a message from me." "What should it say?" Rodriguez asked. Nova smiled, the same confident smile she had worn as a princess, but now it carried something her royal smile never had: genuine happiness. "Tell them that Dr. Nova and Dr. Damon Williams are happy to help save lives, regardless of where those lives come from. And tell the Emperor that sometimes the people you throw away turn out to be the ones you need most." As the message was sent across space to her former home, Nova realized that her exile had given her something far more valuable than any crown. It had given her a purpose, a family, and most importantly, it had given her love. The fat princess and the janitor had indeed built a new kind of empire, one based on compassion, acceptance, and the revolutionary human idea that everyone deserves a chance to be their best self.